The true story of Chris Gardner, from homelessness to Wall Street millionaire. If you like this kind of stories, don't hesitate to click the subscribe button. Let's get to the story. In the early 1980s, Chris Gardner was homeless, broke, and raising his young son alone, sleeping in subway station bathrooms and church shelters. Yet, in less than a decade, he became a millionaire stockbroker, the owner of his own investment firm, and the man whose story inspired one of the most powerful films ever made. This is the true story of a man who refused to let rock bottom define him. Chris Gardner was born in 1954 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His childhood was filled with hardship, poverty, abuse from a violent stepfather, and a home torn apart by alcoholism. He dreamed of a better life, but didn't know how to get there. Before Chris ever walked the cold streets of San Francisco, before he made his first call as a stockbroker, he wore the uniform of the United States Navy. Chris enlisted right after high school, partly to escape a troubled home, partly to see a world that felt much bigger than Milwaukee. The Navy gave him structure and a crash course in discipline. Every morning at dawn, the sound of the boatswain's whistle would echo through the corridors of the ship. He learned to rise instantly, no excuses, no complaints. Days at sea were long and demanding, polishing brass until it gleamed, scrubbing decks until they reflected the sky. But more than the work, the Navy taught him how to keep calm in chaos. Storms would roll in without warning. Waves would slam against the hull with the force of a freight train, and the ship would groan under the strain. Chris learned that when the storm hits, panic is your enemy, and focus is your lifeline. One of his most vivid memories came during a night watch. The ocean was so black it seemed endless. Standing there, the salt wind in his face, he thought about his life and promised himself he would never settle for just surviving. He found work selling medical equipment, but the pay barely covered food and rent. One day, while walking downtown, Chris saw a man step out of a red Ferrari. He asked, "What do you do?" The man replied, "I'm a stockbroker." At that moment, Chris knew, that's what I want to do. But dreams don't come easy. At first, Chris thought they could weather the storm together, he and his partner, Jackie, raising their little boy in their small San Francisco apartment. But poverty has a way of testing love. The unpaid bills stacked higher every week. Arguments became daily, fueled by stress, fear, and the exhaustion of living on the edge. There were nights when Chris would come home from work, and instead of a warm greeting, there'd be silence so heavy it was deafening. Jackie was tired of uncertainty, tired of scraping by, tired of promises that tomorrow would be better. One morning, without much warning, she packed a bag. Chris stood there holding their son, watching the door close behind her, the sound of that latch clicking echoing in his mind. In that moment, it felt like the last bit of stability in his life had been ripped away, and life wasn't finished with him yet. Just weeks after Jackie left, Chris came home to find a notice taped to his front door. Bold, cold letters. Eviction. He had 3 days to leave. No extensions, no second chances. Chris gathered what little they had, a few boxes of clothes, a worn crib, and his son's favorite toy. All stacked in the back of a borrowed car. The apartment, once noisy with arguments, now echoed with emptiness. And as he closed the door for the last time, he stepped into a world where every night would be a question, and every morning a fight for survival. Despite being homeless, Chris convinced a manager at Dean Witter Reynolds to let him into their stockbroker training program. The catch? It was unpaid. Every day he'd work in a suit during the day and search for shelter at night. Some nights they found space in a church shelter. Other nights, they slept on the hard tile floor of a subway bathroom, the sound of trains echoing through the walls. Imagine holding your child close, whispering, "It's going to be okay," while the world outside is cold and unforgiving. That was Chris's reality. He had no safety net, but he had his son, and that was his reason to keep going. Chris worked harder than anyone in the program. While others took lunch breaks, he stayed at his desk making cold calls. He learned to talk fast, cut small talk short, and make more calls than anyone else.
They'd stay till 7, but I had Christopher. I had to do in 6 hours what they'd do in 9.
He studied the market during bus rides. He memorized sales scripts late at night while his son slept beside him. There were 20 trainees. Only one would be offered a full-time job. Chris decided that one would be him, but every day was a fight. Keeping his son fed, keeping their clothes clean, and hiding his homelessness from his co-workers. Failure wasn't an option. He couldn't just try again next year. He needed this now.
I thought I'd wear a shirt today, being the last day and all.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that.
After 6 months of relentless work, Chris ranked at the top of the trainee program. He was offered a full-time stockbroker position at Dean Witter Reynolds.
But, wear one tomorrow, though, okay? Because tomorrow's going to be your first day.
In 1982, with his first paycheck, he secured a small apartment for him and his son. No more shelters, no more cold nights. Over the next decade, Chris's income soared. In 1987, he founded his own brokerage firm, Gardner Rich and Company. By the 1990s, he was a multimillionaire. Chris didn't just keep the success for himself. He became a philanthropist, funding job training programs and shelters for the homeless. In 2006, his autobiography, The Pursuit of Happyness, was adapted into a Hollywood film starring Will Smith, inspiring millions worldwide. From sleeping in a subway bathroom to standing in front of packed arenas, teaching people that no dream is too big. Chris Gardner's story proves one thing. No matter how impossible your situation feels, you are never truly stuck. Because rock bottom isn't the end. It's the foundation for the life you're meant to build. You have the power to change everything if you refuse to quit. Mindset wins every single time. Subscribe for more.